Hi, welcome back to another office visit. Thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to visit with you about fairness. Most people do not feel like life is fair. Why? Well, there could be many reasons, but one that comes to my mind is that in the mind of many, fair is equated with equal, and life doesn't treat everyone equally. For example, your internet connection may fail right as you need to submit an assignment online, but it didn't fail for another student who was submitting that same assignment. Your circumstances were not equal. So we may say it is unfair. And those circumstances being unequal is not the kind of fairness that I'm going to speak about for the most part today during our office visit. But I will for just a moment. Okay, it's a different kind of fairness that I'm going to talk about. Before we go to that, though, let's talk about circumstances being equal. You may have a faster computer than someone else does, so those circumstances aren't equal. You may have developed a better memory than someone else in the class, so the circumstances are not equal. You might not have as good of eyesight as someone else in the class, so the circumstances are not equal. They probably read at a different pace than you do, so those circumstances aren't equal. You see, you might have roommates that keep you up all night or are loud and distracting, whereas someone else might have a private room in a quiet dorm. Our circumstances simply aren't equal. And I'm not going to be able to fix that or change that, nor do I really think it has to be changed. It's part of the main event. You'll remember that office visit, perhaps. But regarding circumstances and how they're not equal, I do want to talk about a certain type of a circumstance. And that is, let's say that you have some unforeseen mental or physical ailment that arises and renders you basically incapable of doing school or schoolwork. That's a pretty significant circumstance in your life that we could consider putting you on an unequal footing with others. Now, while I won't argue that it isn't fair, if you want to define fair as equal, it certainly wouldn't be fair. And while I just said that I'm not going to fix that kind of inequity, or even, frankly, attempt to fix that kind of inequity, I am of the belief that it's important for you to understand that your teachers care about your learning, and they don't want things that we can deal with to get in the way of that learning. And so while you might think this is an unforeseen, out of my control situation, this accident that I had, or this death of a family member, or this major disruption in my life, while you may think that's out of your control, it is, and it may be out of your control. Responding to it isn't out of our control. So if we work together, you'll find that the school does have a means of helping students in that kind of a situation. There's even another kind of a situation. So I guess what I'm saying here is communicate with me, okay? Or with your instructor, whoever that may be. I would encourage you to communicate with them about challenges. Don't be afraid to ask them, is there any way that we can mitigate the impact of this? So since I mentioned the word impact, let's talk about consequences. You'll remember that office visit as well. I talked about the law of the harvest. And in that visit, we discussed the fact that there are natural consequences and there are imposed consequences like grades. Let's just say that your family's been planning a cruise and you want to go with them. But it happens to cause you to have to decide, will I miss school or miss the cruise? Well, you're making a conscientious choice to go on the cruise. This wasn't out of your control. But you may actually prioritize that higher than being in class. I can't say that I would blame you. That might be your priority, and those relationships and experiences and memories that you'll create with your family on this perhaps once in a lifetime opportunity may outweigh the value you see in being here on campus and in your classes. So it's a priority, it's a choice. Unlike the accident or traumatic event that was beyond your control. However, in that case, the key is still communication. And I think it is worth saying communicate early and communicate often. If I have a student come to me and tell me about this cruise and say in 5 weeks, this is what I plan to do. I know that I'm going to miss class. What can I do to mitigate the natural consequence? Meaning, how can I not miss out on the learning and development that I want to gain? Is there a way I can do that? And yes, there may be. We could open things up for you to work ahead or give you some of the opportunities in advance of leaving on that cruise. And also, that could mitigate the imposed consequences of a poor grade as well. So I can't speak for all instructors, and I can't speak for every situation that you may bring to me in this office visit that we're having, but I can say communicate early and communicate often. Now, the kind of fairness that I mainly want to talk about today isn't any of what I've just spent 5 minutes discussing. The kind of fairness that I want to talk about today is a different kind. I'm talking about how I treat students. How fairly will I treat you in this class? Giving each student equal treatment, the best that I can anyway. I can't make all things equal for every student, as I just mentioned, but I can try to treat students with equality and offering you the same opportunity for help and instruction and giving the same assignments and the same exams and holding the same standards, such as a deadline or a grading method, for all in the class. Now I want you to think about this. Every semester, I have a handful of students who feel it necessary to ask me for extensive leniency. They want to retake a test or just take a test that they forgot to take when they should have. Sometimes they tell me the truth about why they missed it. Sometimes they lie. I want you to know your instructors are pretty experienced at this, and they can often tell when you're lying. Maintain your integrity, my friend. It is not worth it is not worth saving that artificial consequence of a grade to lose your integrity. Okay, so just be honest about challenges. But I have people come in, and whether they're honest or they're lying, they want to retake a test or have an extension. I've even had students, more than once in fact, come to me near the end of the semester and ask if they could somehow make up missed work when they had only showed up to class a handful of times all semester. I've had others come in during the last few weeks of the semester and explain that they were doing poorly because they couldn't afford to buy the textbook. In many cases, they come with really solid reasons for their poor academic performance. But at that point in the semester, those reasons are excuses. And I know we might be playing semantics here when I say that reason became an excuse, but if you have a problem, let's talk about it now, early, not later, again. As was the case in discussing fairness regarding circumstances, if you want to discuss how I am treating you and you've got a problem and you perceive it as unfair or you would like some sort of different treatment, you need to talk to me early instead of later. Later, those problems that once may have been preemptively addressed become poor, helpless excuses about to go through the painful experience of enduring natural consequences. Now, often I hear a student say that if I don't let them retake a test or turn in assignments late, that I'm not being fair. You'll remember our previous discussion about the enemy. The "that's not fair" lie is one of the enemy's disguises. It's a lie. It's a lie because it turns the truth inside out. If you think about it, if I make an exception and ignore class policy for one student while requiring everyone else in the class to abide by the rules, that is what would be unfair. Remember, we're talking about treating people fair or equally. Imagine that you're playing in an important football game. You can picture soccer if you prefer, basketball or volleyball or baseball. I don't care what you choose. Choose any game. But I'm going to talk about football for a moment. You're playing in an important football game and the referee lets one player get away with anything and everything, not holding him to the rules. He grabs face masks, he goes in and out of bounds, he makes illegal hits, and he's allowed to do these things while no one else is. Can you imagine being in that game? Can you imagine him pleading that it isn't fair that he has to follow the rules that everyone else does? No, it's absurd. For a referee to allow that because the player asks would be not only unfair but also unethical. So, if you're asking an instructor for an exception, you may actually be asking him to be unfair and unethical. Now, I say may with emphasis because there are some things put in place at the college to help students mitigate some significant circumstances that may arise. But bear this in mind as you think about the law of the harvest and about the enemy and this lie of it's not fair. You can achieve greatness, okay? You have what you need to do it at your disposal if you don't ask for help to find the resource. I'm happy to help. Others are happy to help. But it is up to you. Dream it, then do it. I have high hopes for you, and you should too.